we don't have to take the human out of the equation. Quite the opposite, actually. We have to make sure that
it's understanding exactly how your brain reacts to music and content.
This is why the responsibility goes beyond just developing a product. You also have to really be sure who uses it for what. All right, so let's start it. I guess the first thing we have to do is to introduce who is actually sitting here. And maybe you want to go ahead.
I'm Mark. I'm an application engineer by IDUN. I'm essentially looking at combining what we do with material science together with hardware design, together with product needs from customers, and bringing everything together into applications and product development.
And I'm Simon. I'm the CEO and co-founder, and I do nothing of that. But I'm very happy Mark is here to do that. I have obviously, as the name suggests, been with IDUN since the starting days, which is now November 2017, so more than 2 years. I've been working on creating the idea, obviously, then working on the technology in the early days at ETH, and in the company, mainly been working on the customer side, and then a lot of fundraising in the last few months, which was obviously very exciting with the whole COVID thing going on. And now, since we have just closed the round, I'm also looking for more work in the marketing and sales, and I'm really excited to work on other things again as well.
And what do we actually do here?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So EEG Technologies is a brain-computer interface company. EEG Technology is creating a more intuitive interface between the brain of users and the digital world. Our vision is really creating a much nicer, much better experience how you're using your favorite everyday apps, like your music app, Spotify, or your meditation app, Headspace. And how does that work? We want to build technology which is monitoring your mental and cognitive and emotional state, and then letting that information influence what sound you're listening to or what videos you're being suggested on YouTube. And I guess on a broader scale, creating an environment which is actively and passively influenced by you as the user in the center.
Yeah, it's like when you walk into a room, you have a lot of stuff that's going on in the back of your mind. Like when you see a person, you recognize them or you don't recognize them. There's like tons of information that you take in day to day, but you're not really conscious of it, and your body makes a lot of decisions for you, which you've been trained, which you've essentially learned how to do as you've been growing up. And part of this is emotional intelligence. Part of it is understanding and empathizing with other people around you, and then sometimes changing your behavior to make them feel more comfortable in a new situation or environment. And that's essentially what we want to give to the connected world around us. So when we are using different applications, when we're bringing in content from different streaming services, it's all very interesting, but it's also, we're just like exponentially increasing this year after year. And we really see that there is this need coming, and for many people it already exists, where they just get lost in everything. They get lost in the digital world. And one reason for that is that the digital world doesn't really understand you. It doesn't understand you like a colleague does or a friend does. And we want to bring some of that emotional intelligence to the connected world so that our world can understand us better and react to us better and make us feel more comfortable and basically help us along in our journey in life, I think.
Yeah, I think this comfort zone is a big topic, right? I mean, in an ideal world, when you're at home or you're at your workplace, you would be in an environment where you're feeling as good as possible, right? I mean, you have your task in front of you, you're optimally focused, you just have a good feeling, you're in your flow, and you can basically do the work in half the time. But also, it's not all about work, it's about how you feel throughout your day. And when you go back home And I guess everybody knows that sometimes you can't really switch off from your work, but you would like to. Some people go running or cycling or whatever. But I guess the concept is just replacing the thoughts of work with something else. So the nice thing would be if you go home to have a technological solution which knows how to get you into this flow state of being relaxed, or bringing you into an optimal scenario where you can just go to sleep, for example.
Well, and the thing is, we have that technology here, like in general in our lives. We know that if we have a lot of blue light, that it's exciting us, exciting our brain. And if we're trying to go to sleep, it makes a lot more sense to change the color of that light to a warmer tone, like an orange. And there are some devices that do that only based on the time of day. But there are a lot of people who are also, we're all individuals.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. We all react to these media in different ways. And we can have things like brain training music, or if you go on YouTube, you can find music which is like very low frequency waves. And sometimes it helps me go to sleep, and sometimes I need something else. And it's actually, I think that's the one reason why a lot of playlists don't really optimize to us, is that they're using only the history of what we've played in the past and trying to use that to predict what we want or who we are going to be in the future.
Yeah.
Instead of understanding who we are at this present point in time. So at least my goal is to build technology which really understands who we are in the now. So that it's giving us what we need right now, as opposed to reducing us to an algorithm of who we were in the past. And that's not even like who we were, it's just what we played. It's like what we tapped on in our phone. And we're not just people who tap around on devices, we're individuals. And that's not really reflected in technology nowadays.
And even the data points from what music I listen to, you only have that as input data, but you don't actually know if it helped me in the past. Was it the experience I was actually looking for? Something else that I feel is important to mention is not only this personalized approach, because for some people Metallica is relaxing, for some people it's stressful.
Yeah.
But the other thing is also the comprehensive solutions, because it's not the real deal if you just have music which is tailored to you, but the lights are not, or the temperature is not, or what you're looking at on your smartphone before you go to sleep is not. So actually, I guess it's more of a binary thing. The optimal way to do it would be if you have your complete surroundings reacting to you. And of course, it's kind of a building block approach. At first, we have to build the music and then maybe the visual. But at the end of the day, we should have an experience which is completely surrounding the user. And that, I guess, that would be, from a technical perspective, the goal of what we are doing here day to day.
But that's difficult to build the entire thing, because then you have to build like lights that are reacting. You have to build media that's reacting to you. Or even, there's really interesting things with different sculptures on the wall that can then change airflow, change the way that light is reflecting. But doing that as one company is actually, I would say, impossible. It actually doesn't make sense. But laying the framework for this Internet of Humans concept, so essentially what we said, like giving ability to these devices so that they can be designed to work with you, is what I think the value that we can bring.
I guess the first thing is, the idea in itself is I guess clear, but I think the first step is really building this meta layer of information that can be used for light, for video, for something else. And what is really exciting for me is that now at summer 2020, basically at IDUN, we have the capability to get raw data out of user's brain, may it be through the ear canal or from the top of the head, and use that information now to play around in very different applications, may it be gaming or meditation and mindfulness or music. So this is a really like a point in time where it's like a multiplication of opportunities. And for me, it's going to be extremely exciting to see the next few weeks what we can achieve in gaming and mindfulness and music.
I mean, that's the interesting thing, you know. So we're working a lot with EEG technology, where we can monitor the brainwaves or measure the brainwaves of a person. And this is not a new technology. It's been around for literally decades. But it's really a lab technology. You know, if you want to measure your brainwaves, you go to a laboratory and they put on a cap. They usually use wet electrodes. So they put gel into your hair so you can get better conductivity between the electrodes and your mind. And essentially what we're doing is taking a big part of that, but putting it into devices which can easily fit on your head and be worn throughout the day. And I mean, that's the exciting thing, because we're developing technologies that you can take with you, as opposed to just going to the doctor or going to perhaps a neurofeedback coach, where you have like a small session during the day, and that gives you some insight into how your brain is working and what you need. But the cool thing that we've talked about also with wearables, whether it's like a very, you know, small wearable device that's only tracking your movement, or a more complex thing that's really tracking, for example, your heart over the day, that all of a sudden gives you this ability to really understand yourself from an activity level, and not just from one day, but throughout, you know, a week or a month. But it's been really impossible to do that with the mind and our emotions. But if we can start to track this and then use that to develop ourselves better,
Yeah,
and develop our world better,
I think
that's a value.
Two aspects there are with the next wave of wearables, I think, are extremely relevant. One thing is longitudinal data sets, right?
For sure.
Having wearables, I mean, optimally 24/7, to really understand how does the data look when you're feeling well, but how does it also look when you're not feeling so well. So obviously 24/7 is the holy grail, I guess. But the other aspect, what I'm currently missing a bit when I'm looking at like the market landscape, is we have some people, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 different wearables in their life already, and they're recording different parameters. And what I'm missing is an AI or a solution in general, I guess, which is correlating these data sets, because this is where I feel like with this sensor fusion, this is where I feel a lot of power is actually missing. Because imagine if for example, I'm tracking my heart rate variability, and I would also love to track like my average EEG score every day, and then correlate, okay, what's the correlation between my nervous system and my brain basically every day. And this is something that I want to be, and also as a company, I want to be part of this movement to make that happen.
But it's also like the whole quantified self thing has been going on as well for I guess decades now.
Yeah.
But the question in my mind has always been, who wants to be a data scientist of their own body? It's like we have financial advisors because most people, I mean, they just don't have the time or just the capacity to track all of their investments, or to really understand where they're losing money and how they can optimize their financial life. And for me personally as well, I like to get understanding from wearables, but I usually am not delving into the raw data.
Yeah.
And I think that's like one of the key points that it's actually always been one of the problems with wearables, is that if you just have a score and you're trying to interpret that yourself, it can be difficult for people, because they don't always know what it means. They know that 10,000 steps is supposed to be healthy, and so they might try to achieve that as a goal. And then they might see a positive influence on their life.
Yeah, but I think it's the score. It's about simplifying, right? It's about condensing this insane amounts of data into one number. So you can basically say, and I'm even detecting myself all the time, and when I use these wearable apps, like, I have a score of 8 today of about whatever. So okay, that's good. I'm getting my own score to feel better, like to see, okay, I'm doing fine. So I think the goal would be to create actionable insights, to
Yeah, sure.
have an application which is telling me this is your score, and we can use that information for you to change this or try out this. And this is where many devices, I think, are currently failing or not convincing. Maybe they don't want to get their hands dirty because it can be dangerous or risky to suggest something to somebody. But I feel this is where we need to go.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's about the holistic sense of also using your data and not just recording it, and giving value to your life. But it's going to be really interesting to see how it evolves, because when we combine the motion sensors plus the neurological sensors plus like cardiac sensors, then we can have a holistic view of a person. In the past, we had things like trying to track sleep just using a motion sensor, which, if you look into the data and you look into the research, for sure you can say that you were maybe more calm or you were moving during the night, and that somehow relates to light sleep or deep sleep. But it's far away from like really being able to understand if you were in random eye movement sleep. And if that's not being followed up with understanding how you're performing the next day, then you're not really being able to optimize your life. Like for me personally, I know if I'm eating certain types of foods, I'm probably going to perform better the next day.
Yeah.
But it's more of just like an ad hoc things that I sort of remember about myself. It's not, I'd love to have a system which is really bringing all these things together.
Yeah, fully agree. But I mean, if you would want to do it in an optimal way, you would need to spend hours every day logging everything you eat, everything you do, how you feel. So this is it's a big effort.
I mean, some people do when they have specific medical conditions.
Yeah.
Like taking pictures of each meal that they have.
Yeah, there's actually this cool startup for diabetes patients where they can take a picture and then they get an average how much carbs are in there. So this is, I guess it's, at the end of the day, it's all about making life easier for everybody.
Yeah, for sure.
And for the diabetes, I actually tried out this continuous glucose monitoring patch. I was curious about that. And I learned some stuff about myself, like that I pretty much always have the exact same glucose concentration in the morning when I wake up. But I'm also sometimes a bit high, even though I don't have any medical condition. So I think it's like the educational, the preventative aspect is also important. So in an optimal way, you could try it out with everybody to intervene before a medical condition actually happens.
Yeah.
And the preventative topic is another big thing in wearables, because when we started out, a lot of people asked us, but why don't you want to go into the medical space? And we were like, the true power of wearables, of health monitoring, is actually doing it when you're still healthy.
Yeah.
And changing the behavior early on. But this is it has a big consequence, obviously, because it also, the people need to pay it themselves. Then they need to be convinced of the capability of the device.
Yeah. I mean, there's always cases. I mean, also from my own family where, I get a call and I hear that my mom had a stroke, but it happened a few days ago. Because she didn't realize that she was having a stroke.
Oh.
And it's quite common.
Yeah.
That something happens, but the people don't go to the doctor.
Yeah.
And with a lot of these conditions, of course, if it's like more of a major stroke, you have to get to the doctor as soon as possible, or you have long-term damage. And that's always one of the things that I've loved about just the idea of being able to track basic cardiac events, because then you can have a system which allows people to know that they should be going to a doctor right now, and it's not just that they're feeling bad, or just feeling tired, but yes, they definitely have to go like within the next hour.
Yeah. It's the technical solutions for the cardiac events. I feel like they're in place. The problem there is just that they're not addressing the mass market, and it's more like you have to be in this medical system. and then you can get access to it?
Yeah, I mean, that's also what I've seen also in past startup projects, that we have the technology to develop these solutions, but really getting them into and scaling them into the whole medical system poses a lot of challenges. And they're challenges for a reason. I mean, technology it has to work correctly for medical diagnoses. But then there's also the space in between a definitive medical diagnosis and having a warning system to know that maybe something critical just happened, and now you need to really go and seek medical care.
I had a discussion some years ago with the CFO of a very large biotelemetry company from the US. They were creating these ECG patches.
Yeah.
And what he told me, their biggest pain from an economic perspective as a company was that they had so many false positives. Because the system, I mean, the worst thing that could happen to them is a heart attack happening and they're not picking it up. So I think it's a sensitivity is basically maximized. But what's happening is that 80% of their alarms are not actual emergencies. And they, as a service, they have to pay for that.
Yeah.
And this was a big problem, and I think it remains a big problem to have this balance between the false positives and not missing out crucial events.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the key things that you design for when you have things like a radiology device for understanding if a person has pneumonia or not, or if there's tumors in the brain and they're trying to extract this automatically from CT or MRI scans. Because if you make and that's why we also need to keep humans in the process, and not just give everything over to algorithms. We talk about improving the workflows of doctors, not about replacing them.
Yes.
And I think also in our product, we don't want to. The whole point is bringing humanity into the technology and the way that we interface with technology.
Yeah.
Whereas right now, a lot of people are always worried about, and for good reason, that the human aspect is being sort of taken out because we have biases in the ways that algorithms are developed, whether it's for face recognition or whether it's for something else like identifying, if someone could be a criminal, or if their sentence should be, or if their probation should be approved or not. And if these algorithms are not based on really representative data, if they're always going to be skewed and biased, then we shouldn't be using them.
Yeah.
And I mean, in the product design that we're doing, that's actually one point, is to not have a general idea of how a person's brain should react to different types of music. It's understanding exactly how your brain reacts to music and content.
Yeah.
And building that experience directly for you.
Which is, I guess, a personalized algorithm approach.
Yeah.
But my take on that discussion is always that technology itself is not evil. It's technology doesn't have an inherent a motivation to be good or to be evil. It's all about the context, how it's used. And I feel it's our responsibility as a company to make sure that the people who build the solution, the people who maintain the solution, and the people who use the solution, they have the right information and responsibility, and maybe also control aspects to use it in a good way. And this is why the responsibility goes beyond just developing a product. You also have to really be sure who uses it for what.
Yeah.
And there, I liked your point, basically saying that we don't have to take the human out of the equation. Quite the opposite, actually. We have to make sure that the human is being able to influence that again as strong as possible, actually. I like that idea of developing our solution as a guardian angel for the users. It's accompanying you, but it only solely wants your best. This is how I would like to implement that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, with the growing explosion of technology, I think it's something that we need.
Yeah.
More and more.
Yeah. Good.
Cool.
Wow. that was
So that's what we're trying to do as a company.
A lot of stuff, huh?
And month by month, we're getting closer to achieving this goal.
Hopefully.
So I guess a part of this podcast series is to give a bit of insight into the progress that we're making as a company. And so you can see the traction that we're developing, and so that you don't have a feeling that we're developing neurofeedback technology within a black box, but that it's being done also in a slightly more open way.
Yeah. Showing also the people behind, right? What's our personal motivation to develop these products and solutions? And what I feel could also be interesting is like inviting people from our network, external experts,
For sure.
To get a different point of view on what we're working on every day.
Mm-hmm.
And cut.